Welcome to Michael's CLC Career Life Connections Capstone Project. The contents of this capstone project will be my artifact plus core competencies, my passions, reasoning, 5, 10, 15 years, and hands-on experience. So firstly, my artifact plus core competencies. This is my wall of belts. I worked for roughly 5 years to get my complete wall of belts with my black belt. I started at around the age of 8, probably closer to 7. And for reference, I had just moved to Brazil when I was 6 turning 7 years old. Very late 6 years old. Now, the core competencies. There's communication, thinking, and personal and social. Communication includes the set of abilities that you use to impact and to impart, exchange information, experiences, and ideas to others. Thinking involves the generation of ideas and concepts that are novel and innovative in contexts in which they are generated. And then personal awareness and responsibility involves understanding the connections between personal and social behavior and well-being. These core competencies are what you need to have to, let's say, have a good base so you may do better in your future. Let's say university or job. And these are really well if you have them built through the years. And so, how did I build my core competencies during my Taekwondo journey, during my journey to gain my wall of belts? Well, in my Taekwondo journey of collecting all my belts, I was an instructor for 90% of it. I was responsible for warming up the class, doing basic kicks and basic stretching. To accomplish this, I had to communicate to a class of 5, 10, or even 20 students. These students could range from 7 years of age to anything above that. Mind you, I started as an instructor at 8 years old. I was teaching people that were way older than me, even adults. So, I was focused on my intent and purpose to warm up the class, make sure they were trying their best, and keep them in line. That is how I use my communication core competencies while I obtained my black belt. So, this really helped me communicate better, to make sure that the class was in line, make sure that they were doing what they were supposed to until the master arrived and gave the actual class. And then, thinking. One time when we were doing our black belt class, we were tasked with learning how to do a kip up. A kip up is the thing you see in movies where a person gets up from the ground by kicking their legs up and their torso follows, like this guy is doing right here, making them stand up. The steps my master gave me didn't really work for me, and we were trying to learn this skill by the end of class. So, it forced me to think critically and reflect on how I would successfully do the kip up before the end of class. After evaluating my situation, I developed a strategy that worked. I came up with my own style of doing it and was the only person in the dojo who did it that way. Actually, my master said I was the first person he saw doing the kip up that way. And then personal social. And of course, since I also attended class during my Taekwondo journey, I had to frequently talk and work alongside other people. I, for reference, am Brazilian and had just moved from Brazil. Remember, I was early 8 years old. So even Canadian culture was new to me. I met many true Canadians, Indians, and of course, Koreans. I became good friends with many of them, and they taught me a lot about their culture. I was constantly recognizing people's personal and cultural values and personal strength and abilities. That is how I was constantly using and developing my personal and social values. So, Taekwondo and me. I strongly believe that doing martial arts forces a person to become better, not only physically, but mentally. It taught me always to try my best, no matter the circumstances, to respect people who teach and give advice. Alongside that, the drive I had to be the best was only reinforced by martial arts. So, with this entire journey in mind, what am I passionate or interested in? Really? There are multiple things that I'm passionate about. I'm passionate about following God. I love to play competitive sports or just be competitive in general. I love video games. I really like sports cars, supercars, hypercars, going exec. You guys know. I'm also a big family and friend person. Now, with these two things in mind, we go to, and so, what does this all amount to? Since these are my passions and have been for a very long time, a job that really stood out to me was orthodontics. It requires a lot of effort, but the outcome really does outweigh the risk. I think it is also important to mention that I decided this when I was 13, and unless something dramatic happens in my life, I do not plan on changing that decision. And now this is where the Taekwondo part enters. I also credit my drive to become an orthodontist to Taekwondo. It taught me to do things that challenge me. Orthodontics is a really challenging subject in dentistry. It's not just dentistry, it's a post dental. So, and to do things without cutting corners. My black belt is a physical representation of all the hard work and shaping I went through to gain it. That is why it is my artifact for this project. So, where do I see myself in 5, 10, and 15 years? Since I want to be an orthodontist, what steps will I take to gain that position? Well, in 5 years, I see myself as a dental student, having either obtained my bachelor's of biology or went straight into dental with my required courses. This is because dentistry is actually really interesting. You don't need a bachelor's, you only need your required courses. Although your grades must be extremely well, and your DAT, which is the test, the dental acceptance test, has to be extremely high. So I would have taken my DAT and have passed my in-person interview. Interview also heavily required and is heavily graded. It is something sometimes and most times is what makes or breaks you entering dental school. Then in 10 years, I see myself graduated from dentistry. Also, I would have already taken and passed my board exam by this time. I would also have worked for the required 2 years of my dentistry to get into a orthodontics program. That is because most universities require 1, 2, or maybe even 3 years of active dentistry or active practicing of dentistry to enter into an orthodontics program. So, we move on to the 15-year mark. In 15 years, I see myself as a full-time orthodontist. I would have my university debt paid off by this time and would be planning to open my very own clinic. This would be if everything went right, everything stepped in line, and everything went perfect. And I really hope that happens. And so, what did I do to increase my chances of that happening? I put on some hands-on experience. So, to prepare myself for the journey ahead, I logged 30 hours of hands-on work to gain some experience. Like Yoda said, no, try not. Do or do not. There is no try, only do. So, what did I do? I did 19 hours of window washing. How does this relate to orthodontist? Well, a orthodontist who opens their own clinic is an entrepreneur. So I went and did my own entrepreneuring. I knocked door to door selling my window washing service. These 19 hours taught me to face rejection, endure the hot sunny hours, and taught me how to be a people's person. Then I put 5 hours of actual orthodontist shadowing. I allocated time to actually shadowing a orthodontist for a day. They showed me how a day in the life of an orthodontist looks like, preparing me for what the future will likely hold. It was pretty cool. And then 6 hours of being a camera operator. Now you might think, how does being a camera operator have anything or any skill that an orthodontist might need in the future? But here's the interesting part. The 6 hours that I put into volunteering as a camera operator in my church taught me that I should always be prepared beforehand to make sure that there is as little to no error or little to no space for error. It also taught me to work in a tight-knit group to achieve a common goal. All these things are attributes that an orthodontist needs to have on a day-to-day basis on a job. And I saw this actually when I went to shadow the orthodontist. They were working really well, close together. Something opened up, he went. Something else opened up, he went. Everybody was helping each other. Everybody had a job. Everybody was a tight-knit group. And then, so what tools do I currently use, or what tools do I use to put myself out there? A tool I have used to prepare myself, or to promote myself actually, is the NCSA portal. Since I have been competing at a high level in soccer, this tool helps me to sell myself to university and college coaches. There is a full description of my achievements there, grades, and self-marketing, and any self-marketing to improve my chance of being picked. And this is me. Now it's August 2026. I went to Johns Hopkins because of the NCSA portal, because they reached out to me. And that was a really fun experience. And this is me in Edmonton. So, what are my next steps? What do I need to do? Well, first I need to apply to universities in October. Right now, as I said, is 2026 August. And so, I'll be applying in 2026 October. Then, maintain my grade average. Of course, universities do not want a student that lowers their grades. They always want someone that maintains or goes above and beyond and gets better. So that is another thing. And then thirdly, start my 5, 10, and 15-year journey while working to achieve my passions. And so, thank you for listening and watching my capstone project.